Hey everybody, Ty here again. Today we're having a very special conversation with someone who is near and dear to the organization. Miss Aisha Tripp will be joining us in a second. Aisha has been with our organization since the very beginning. She was one of our very first storytellers at our very first story hour session, and she's since become an integral part of the organization in so many ways and a leader in the community as well. Hey everyone joining us right now. Aisha is both a poet, a playwright, an author, podcast host. She's an educator. There's not much that Aisha doesn't do. She's a world traveler, and she's also a great friend. And so let me bring on Aisha, and I want to talk to Aisha a little bit, both about kind of what we're all feeling right now and what's been going on this past week, month, year. But also, Aisha is going to be our host this week on our Listen Live storytelling series. And so I want Aisha to introduce. Hey, Sugar, Megan. Hi, everyone. All right.
Hello.
Hi.
Hey.
How are you?
Um, I'm here. I'm
That's a loaded
here.
question right now.
Right? Yeah.
Right? So I just want to give some background to anyone who's joining us right now. Aisha and I have a very special bond, I
Yes.
should say, where
Ayasha.
we actually do this regularly, where she and I get together. And it used to be in person, and we used to have happy hours together, but we would talk about our businesses that we have started,
Yeah.
social justice more generally, um, life, love,
Everything.
work, all of those good things. And what do we call those? Ty plus Aisha
The Taisha.
equals
The
the
Taisha.
Taisha show. Yeah.
The Taisha show. Stay tuned. It's coming, guys. After this quarantine, we're making it happen now, but we'll make it happen in person, as we slowly go forward into what we're going into. So what can we do?
I mean, what are we going into? What's next?
You know what? Like, I think I told you this. Like, I'm just calling on the strength of my ancestors right now. If they lived through what they went through, who am I to complain? I mean, we got to have our moments of frustration and our moments to vent and also, feel everything we're feeling. But I just really believe we do got to keep moving forward. So the best way you
Yeah.
can, when you can. So I'm not here to tell anybody how they should, respond. Definitely not about that.
Yeah. I mean, tell me more generally, just how are you doing right now? How are you feeling? There's a lot going on. There's COVID, there's George Floyd, there's everything around it that is coming up for people within the Black community. Like, how are you doing in general?
For me personally, I feel like I've been a turtle. I've been like this
Mm,
for some time, around like February. I've been taking like a social media break in general, just kind of poking my head out, coming back, doing what I need to do to protect and preserve my own spiritual and emotional well-being. The COVID definitely has its impact. And then in reference to what's happening recently, with, as we already know, the killings of Black men and Black women, just Black people in general, have been going on for forever. And I mean, I just personally think, sorry, I'm just having a moment. I'm thinking back to grad school, and I remember we had to read 100 Years of Lynchings. If you have not
mm,
read that book, or if you have not heard of it, I would encourage you to look it up. And it's detailed events, photographs of the lynchings that took place in the early 20th century. And I remember that in 2012 specifically, just thinking to myself, like, wow, like to get access to a camera at that time, like in 1912, 1915, it wasn't like what it is today. It actually, like, to take a photograph, that was a big deal. And the fact that
mhm.
there are people back then at that time getting together to photograph the killings of Black men and Black women and documenting that and putting it on postcards and sending it around, it's just been there from like the beginning. And so now we're at a point where people can film it. And so for me, I'm like, I'm not going to watch that because I've already had to see the postcards. And I just really feel like until we really talk about what this country was built on, it's just going to continue to happen. But outside of all that frustration and just despair that I have personally, what I can say on the flip side is that it is good to some degree to see people slightly starting to get it, but I'm really hoping that it's on a deeper level outside of memes and social media posts. I really hope people are having real in-depth conversations and really going deep into the history. We have to know the history. Wasn't it? I think the 31st was like the anniversary of the Tulsa massacre. This the irony of everything. Like, right. I think that's why me and my cousins and family were just like kind of numb. Like, yeah, they've been killing Black people. Okay. Like, so yeah, but I'm just hoping that it's going to create more awareness and also an understanding of the history of this. I think that's what we need to get. There's a history of Black bodies being killed. And in that book particularly, it's not just Black men, it's Black men, it's Black women. There's even an image of a woman who was pregnant. You know, so it will F you up. I know it did. And that's why, like, I can't watch, like, videos because the postcards always come to my mind. So, yeah. Sorry, that's heavy and a lot to say.
Yeah, I mean, that's real. That's what's happening right now. Can you repeat the title of that again and the
100
author?
Years of Lynching, and I'm pulling it up right now. The author is Ralph Ginsburg. So look it up. Just do, we need to do our homework as America, period. Like, that's why and I also appreciate too how earlier, I got it pulled up right here too, that it was posted on Listen for a Change around do not mistake an observer for a bystander. Some people are silent because listening is a quiet act. Check in before you call out. I really appreciate the fact that was posted, Ty, because Listen for a Change is all about listening, and we have two ears and one mouth for a reason. And I don't think we should assume in a time like this that just because someone's not making a post that they do not care. Social media is not the standard for communication. It's one way to communicate, but it is not the only way to communicate. Put that out there into the world. Need to put that out there.
Yeah, I mean, I actually thought of that. What I was thinking of when that was posted on our Listen for a Change page is like, do not mistake an observer for a bystander. Is there are many friends of mine, and there are even moments for myself where I'm just not a social media person, and I think there's so much pressure right now to become social media people and to use it in the right way, whatever the right way is. The right way right now. And social media is extremely taxing, especially now in this coronavirus time where we are just glued to our screens day and night. And all of our interactions come from our screens. And so many people like yourself have taken social media detoxes. Some people don't process on social media. Some people don't process publicly. Like I don't exercise publicly. That's a personal thing of mine. I hate going to gyms. And so, there are people out there who don't process these things publicly. Not everything needs to be a public act. And so I just wanted to remind, because I saw several people, and I understand where the frustration is coming from. And, I should point out that the people who said this on my feed that I noticed were from the Black community, but they're like, your silence is speaking something right now. And I just wanted to remind people that sometimes reading into inaction and silence without the full context will get you into trouble. Or it might lead to misunderstandings, or it might lead to a breakdown of, and miscommunication. So that quote, that it resonated with me, and I want people to check in with others. And I also want to remind people that it is not the responsibility of, particularly the Black community right now, but any people from marginalized communities who are under attack or feeling things or going through trauma to be the ones checking in too. And so it's tricky. I wanted to ask you from the perspective of an ally right now, and I hesitate to use that word just because there's so much around it, but as someone who is watching what's happening, seeing what's happening in the country, really trying to humbly step back and be mindful of everything that's happening, and like make sure to put other people's voices first and listen to the stories. What have you found to be the most supportive? You personally, I know you don't speak for anyone other than yourself, but like, what have you found to be the most supportive right now from your social network?
Yeah, well, thanks for naming. Like, I definitely think it's important. Like, I'm not speaking for all Black people. You know, I think that's what happens too. Like, we think, oh, well, I see a post that says check on my friend of color, so now let me just run and call this person I haven't talked to in 3 months to now send a text and be like, how are you doing? Like, were you gonna text me before that? But anyway, and I've gotten a couple. I'm
Did you
like,
just text me
okay,
because you read that meme? Yeah.
yeah, I get the intention, but it's like, okay. But what I would say to that is, be authentic. Be authentic about where you are and be authentic about how you're responding. I think sometimes, like, we're living in a time where people are trying so bad to be something or construct themselves in a certain way that they can't authentically speak their truth. So if you want to be in support of me, that could be, you know, reaching out and saying, hey, Aisha, how are you doing? Or it could be, you know, Aisha, I really don't even know what to do. Or Aisha, I am confused. Like, and that's going to look different for everybody. So, but as long as you're being authentic to where
Mm.
you're coming from, then I can meet you where you're at. We can go from there. And I'm also just really big on just like I said earlier, like educate yourself beyond the post.
Mm.
Understand the history of what is going on. I think if people really did that on their own collective and individual terms, like we're living in the age of information. Sorry, I got a call, my bad. There's so much coming at us. I didn't know it did that.
It was someone
Anyway,
just
like
checking in on you, right? That person you haven't talked
right.
to in 2 months, being like, "Hey, how's it going?"
But you know, there's so much coming at us that sometimes it is hard to like narrow down what is the information you can trust. But I would say, you know, use that discernment, do the research, and really think more critically as opposed to just going off of what you see in the moment, like just a meme that just tells you something to do. But I definitely would advocate be authentic. Don't try to sugarcoat stuff. I'm about real
Mm.
conversations.
Yeah. You know, the last time we talked a couple weeks ago, we talked a little bit. It's funny. We talked a little bit about Asian Americans specifically,
Mm-hmm.
and coming from this community, being of a minority status, and
Mm-hmm.
how it relates to how Asian Americans historically have related to the Black community. And then this came out, and or this happened, and the video came out, and I think it made a lot of Asian Americans really look in the mirror, and they
Mm-hmm.
felt challenged, and they felt, I I think oftentimes people of color, Asian Americans included, can hide behind that label as like, I'm a person of color as well,
Mm-hmm.
and I have experienced racism and I've experienced discrimination and all of those things, and
Yeah.
so I know what it feels like.
Mm-hmm.
And I just wanted to hear from you how you feel like people, non-Black members of your community, have shown up for you,
Mm-hmm.
and in ways that have given you hope or in ways that have surprised you.
And when you say non-Black, you're talking about, are you talking about other minorities, like people of the
Other
Asian, or
minorities
are you talking about
coming
white
from
people?
another minority, but white people as well. I'm curious because we have listeners who are from all walks and
Mm-hmm.
find themselves in positions right now where they're curious what their friends are going through and feeling right now.
Well, let me tell a quick story behind that. So,
Yeah.
one of my close best friends is this white woman named Catherine Zaloni.
Mm.
And when Catherine and I met in Chicago at Groupon, she invited me over to her house for St. Patrick's Day, like a little brunch. So it was a very white holiday. Okay, you already know that. And so I'm over there, and I'm the only Black person. Nothing new, whatever. And so we're all hanging out, drinking, having a good time. And like a friend of her friend, it wasn't even her friend, but it was a friend of a friend, started asking all these questions about my hair. Like, oh my gosh, your
Mm.
hair. Oh my God, I love it. Tell me how to do it. You know, that type of conversation, right? And I'm like, right. And before I can even say anything, Catherine speaks up and she was like, oh my gosh, you make it so hard for white people like myself. She is not a
Mm.
freaking Shia pet. She is not here to speak on to speak on all behalf of all Black people in reference like to her hair. And so I told Catherine, I said, thank you for speaking. You know, I appreciate that, but I can speak for myself. And she knew. But like, I share that because that was years ago, right? And recently, Catherine has reached out to me, and Catherine has reached out to me prior to this. And she reached out saying, hey, how are you doing? How are you holding up? And, you know, she and I can have that authentic conversation about race, America, the history. She can name the fact that, you know what, I'm not going to fully get it, but I'm going to help call other people out. And I'm here just to listen and be there for you in any type of way. And I think the reason why she and I have that type of rapport is because we have that authentic relationship that is built over time. So I think that, you know, to answer a question like, how do people show up for, you know, their Black friends? Well, it just doesn't start because a Black man got killed and now it's on social media. You should have been showed up. And I don't mean like to call it out like that, but to me, you got to call it out for what it is. And so I think people should kind of start thinking about, who are you really interacting with? Who is in your circle of friends? You know, like, are you really having interactions with people from different backgrounds, from different cultures, and really getting to know them in times of normalcy and not just in times of despair? And so to me, those are the people that are showing up in my life because we already had that to begin with. But there are people out there right now, like, yeah, they want to show up and you still can, but I'm hoping even like, not even after per se this passes, because this is going to continue. But it's like, I just really hope it charges people to think about expanding their network and building more authentic relationships with people just because you connect and get along, and not just because of this race thing that is going on in America, if that makes sense. You know, and like, even going back to the example with me and Catherine, I knew in that moment, I was like, oh, you get it. We cool. But I already, you know, we were already vibing and becoming friends before that. So, and like, that's why me and you are cool. That's why I have friends who are Black. I have friends who are Asian. I have friends on the other side of the world. Like, I really believe in connecting with people on a spiritual level, but we, you know, live in a society where there's so many like walls that it gets in the way of people really connecting. So that's just my opinion on that. Like, connect with people, not just in times of despair, but in times of normalcy. Straight up.
Yeah. And I think it's increasingly hard for people to do that because we're becoming more and more siloed in who we interact with. I don't, you know, social media doesn't help that cause. Demographically, we're probably more, you know, like segregated in terms of, you know, community by ethnicity, by income level, all of that stuff. Now more than ever, jobs, like, you know, we're just not seeing people from diverse backgrounds and diverse walks of life. And I think that's been really hard for some people who want to help and want to do something and want to reach out and want to engage, but also don't even know where to start. I think it's a big challenge right now. You know, if you live in like something, I don't know, I'm just going to pick on a city that I think is hella white. Like, I don't know, help me pick one.
Oregon.
I'm going to get in trouble. I know. I'm going to get in trouble no matter what I say. But like, I don't know, Idaho probably is like a lot of white people, right? So, you know, if you're from Idaho, that's going to be more challenging. And I think that that's where your point of doing the work, of reading up on the history of, you know, and social media, we kind of been ragging on it, but it does open up a lot of windows.
It does.
Into stories and lives that you normally would not see otherwise. So I think there are ways to use it. I wanted to circle back to that question because I wanted to ask specifically to you, and not on behalf of anybody or community or representing anything, but like you personally in the last week, like how have your friends shown up for you? Not from the Black community, but
okay. So I guess I didn't really answer it, did I? I'm like, my bad.
No, but I mean, you went on and you told us a philosophy movement that I really appreciated.
Like, you know, like, I mean, they've shown up by just being there, just, you know, simply just checking in. But like I said, like, these are people who I already have vibed and connected with, so it's authentic. I know I sound like a broken record. I just believe be authentic about it. Cause like, I mean, I get the intention of like, oh, I want to be there. I want to care. But it's like, it's more than showing up for a cause. It's like, show up for people. I think that's the thing. Like, Black people are always presented as caricatures or causes or protests. And it's like, we're people. We're multidimensional people who have different things going on in our lives. It's not always a protest. It's not always a cause. Like, connect with people on a human level. But it's hard to do that in this society that we live in because we're not given that opportunity to be seen as that. We're always seen as just something, just 1D. And so definitely, if there are people, I would say, you know, I think like for me, like the people like in my community, they have showed up. But, you know, I just feel like just saying people just need to connect on a more authentic level and not just according to causes.
Yeah. I mean,
what are we going to be talking about?
It doesn't feel good. It doesn't feel good for anybody to have someone reach out and be like, hey, I saw the news about this particular community that you belong to, and I just wanted to see if you're doing okay. You're right. The intention is good. The intention is like, I want to make sure that you yourself, I was reminded of you, and that's natural. But I think, you know, this might be what you're getting at, is it objectifies the person a little bit. And it says like, hey, you are this label to me. And this is the reason why I'm checking in, is because of this, and not from like a human to human level.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
that's just
go ahead.
No, it's like, and that's, you know, and we see it too, even like every time, like when a Black person is killed, there's a need to like prove their humanness, and also like a need to prove that they're a victim. Like, it's always like, well, what did you do? Or what were you wearing? Or how were you talking? Or who were you around? Like, there's always this need to like prove who we are. And then we just become a symbol, an object. And it's like, that's tiring. And then I also want to say too, it's not to say that just because you do check in on somebody that's a problem. Just come from an authentic space. That's all I'm saying. Even if you're saying, I don't know if it's the right thing to say or not, but I do care about you and I'm just checking in, then that's fine. But don't come trying to put on airs, because people see right through that. That's all I'm saying.
I made a post last week on social media. And I'm a little, I feel like a lot of people might, maybe they're not, but I'm very like tiptoey around social media right now.
You're very what?
Because tiptoeing,
yeah.
like careful around what I say, what I post, what I repost. I'm already careful to begin with. Because I just got a new job. But you got to be careful when you start work and people don't know who you are yet, right? But the other reason is because I think I don't know that it's my space to speak right now, or my time. Like there's so much out there, and I just don't know. And this is me coming from an honest space. This is not me like recommending anything to anybody, but this is just how I felt this past week. Is I almost don't know when to speak up and when not to speak up, because there's so much being said right now, and being reposted. But anyway, so all of that is long tangent. I made a post. Yeah, I made a post last week that was like early on when this happened. And like I said, I saw that Asian American cop in that video. And I do want to say that I did watch a part of the clip and I immediately regretted watching it. I didn't know what I was getting myself into. It was like that day that it came out, and you know what it's like on social media. Sometimes you just scroll past stuff, and you know, I specifically wanted to highlight that I saw the Asian American man, and it really made me uncomfortable in a way that I don't think I've realized in my adult life. That I come from a community and like a history of deep racism within my family and discrimination, and within my lineage of Asian American. Like, it's no secret to any Asian American that our parents and our grandparents are racist as F. And like, we kind of laugh about it. So I made this post that was like, hey, Asian American friends, remember how, you know, we used to always laugh at how our parents would say like the most racist things at the dinner table. Well, now's the time to stop laughing. So I just wanted to bring that up, that I've been feeling this, like, how do I even approach this with certain family members right now, in a way that I have ignored for most of my life.
Wow. And see, that's the side where I guess like the multiple sides, right? Like the introspection that you are having and others are having, and in regards to their family members. And you're not the first friend of mine. My other friend, I won't say his name, he used to joke with me about what his mom, another friend of mine who is Mexican, would say things that his mom would say. So it's like a generational thing for sure. And
Yeah.
I've heard about it. I haven't experienced it, but I knew coming into those
Mm-hmm.
spaces, like, oh, you know what I mean? But like, that's interesting that the introspection is happening. And I think that is the good thing. And even going back to what you said about you feeling not what to say, not you feeling unsure about what to say. And I think that speaks to the overwhelming amount of opinions and information that are being given to us or force fed to us. I don't know how you want to name it. And I think that's why it is important for everybody to think about, how do you process? Like, what's the most healthy way for you to process things? Because it is going to look different for everybody. And we are living in a time, another book plug. Um, read this book called The Organized Mind. And that book talks about how we're handling all this information in this time of like information overload. And like, people aren't really realizing that our brain can only handle so much. And there's just so many different views, opinions, all coming at us. And we do need time to process. Like seeing somebody, watching a video of somebody being killed and then scrolling to the next thing on your timeline where somebody gets engaged, and then seeing somebody say Black Lives Matter, Blue Lives Matter, you should say this, don't say that. Be like,
All in the span of like 30 seconds, right? You know,
look,
it's a lot.
It is.
It's a lot. It's not normal.
No.
Yeah.
It's not. No, it's not. And so we need spaces to process, and that's going to look different for everybody. So, and you know, and be true. Be true to what you feel. Everybody's so scared nowadays. I'm gonna feel so about it. I don't know. Don't make me. I'm gonna pull some Dave Chappelle.
I mean, I also think being true to how people feel has gotten some people in trouble too.
That's true. We keep
By
it real,
people
goes wrong.
saying things and being authentically who they are right now.
That's true.
Not just right now, but in general, has you know, gotten people in trouble. So I do think like, yeah, there's a reason why I think many people like myself feel this intense filter.
Yeah.
And like anxiety around this too. I do want to call that out. Like I do feel anxiety around social media. But at the same time, it's social media is how a lot of us are getting our news and connecting with one another these days. But there is major anxiety around that as well.
Yeah.
Well, speaking of social media and Instagram Live, you are going to be our guest host this week on our Instagram Listen Live storytelling session. And it's going to be a special guest. So you tell us when it is and who is going to be your guest.
So it's this Thursday, June 4th. Tune in live. You know, click on that Instagram button that you click on every day. With a very, very close friend of mine, Miss Vogue Robinson, who is the past Poet Laureate. Doesn't that sound so bougie? Poet Laureate of Clark County.
Pretty accomplished.
Right? Very, right? Of Clark County in Las Vegas. She also is an educator, writer, author, auntie, best friend, godmama, phenomenal woman indeed. Just you know, just hearing her voice, just the way she speaks, it just makes your whole just spirit go, like a nice warm hug. And we're going to be, well, the title of her story is Creating in Times of Grief. And she's going to share a story around grief and then also share a poem in connection to that. And we're going to connect that to the grief that people are feeling right now, because people have been grieving. You know, people have been grieving a hug. People have been grieving the loss of their jobs, the loss of Black lives. Like there's a lot of loss and despair and just frustration going on. But we're going to talk about when something is taken from you, what can you still create? And we're going to talk about that can be, for some people, you know what, now I've been inspired to create some form of policy. I'm going back to school to start making some laws and start changing. For others, that could be, I want to create some change by joining a nonprofit or an organization and working with a young person, or For somebody else, it could be creating some form of art, some form of protest, or it could just be creating your own space of silence. Because as we know, there's so much coming at us. Sometimes you need to find that space to be like, I can't. I just need peace. So we're going to talk about what do you create in times of grief. And we're going to give space for that frustration, and we're going to give space for hope.
Awesome. And that's going to be on the Listen for a Change Stories account. So you're going to take this account over. So make sure to subscribe. Yeah, Instagram takeover. I can't wait. I personally can't wait. It sounds like an amazing story that Vogue has to tell. And I hope that our listeners tune in and hear this. I mean, every time you talk, I feel like nuggets of wisdom come out, whether you know that or not. You are definitely a leader within my community that I recognize and admire and look up to. And so thank you for being such an integral part of Listen for a Change. Thank you for using your voice and your knowledge and your heart and all the things that make you you, and putting it out there and sharing it with us and helping us learn and giving us hope and joy and all of those things. So
thank you.
Again, subscribe to Listen for a Change Stories. And Aisha's going to be on this Thursday. Remind us what time again?
This Thursday at 6 p.m. Check in. We're going to put music in the background.
With Miss Vogue Robinson.
Vogue Martinez Robinson.
All right. Well, have a good rest of your day. And thank you so much for taking the time out, especially right now, and being with us and just allowing all of us to connect.
Yes. All right, Ty. Love you.
All right.
See you guys all soon. Take care.
Bye.
Bye.